Cognitive neuroscience is an interesting thing, and I don't really study it in great depth, but I always keep my eye on the scene and follow a few, great cognitive neuroscientists on Twitter and read a few papers, what they're up to. And it's really, really great, but at the same time, I am somewhat concerned about the scene, not so much the scene in itself, but the way it is being portrayed in the media. And what I see is happening is that with each year that goes by, traditional psychology, and I'm in some ways not a traditional psychologist, but I'm coming from the same kind of school of thought, traditional psychology and psychotherapy are being pushed to one side, and what's being promoted is so-called evidence-based cognitive neuroscience. But when you look a little bit more closely, and this on the surface of course sounds like a good thing, now we've got this evidence-based, brain-based treatment for things, but the reality is that it's not really working in that, 20, 30 years down the line with cognitive neuroscience, we're not really creating many effective treatments for basic low-level mental health conditions like depression or anxiety. It's not coming up with much. There are some pharmacological interventions like fluoxetine, Prozac, and this kind of thing, but we're learning, all the time that drug-based treatments have side effects and they don't really work in the longer term. What concerns me is not so much the existence of cognitive neuroscience or where it's going, but the fact that the media are kind of on it to slowly push mainstream psychology out of the frame. There's been quite a situation in America with the VA, the Veterans Association, for veterans who've been in combat, basically, who've been in the armed forces in America, where they've been promised like evidence-based cognitive neuroscientific treatments, and they're totally not working. And at the same time, slightly more expensive traditional psychotherapeutic techniques, which are working to a degree, are just being shoved out the door. So I wanted to make a brief video about this because I don't want to go just down the road of kind of, competing. What I do anyway is a bit out of the mainstream with bioenergetics anyway, and that scene has anyway become a bit marginalized, and that's just how it is. But even with the mainstream aspects of traditional psychology, psychotherapy basically, and psychoanalysis, they're getting shoved out the way by the media and by this promotion of pharmaceutical interventions and cognitive neuroscience. And the truth is that actually people aren't really getting any better. There aren't really any treatments that are effective from this field for low-level mental health conditions. And so, this is a source of worry and this is a source of concern, and it kind of reinforces for me the sense that in some way there's a force, commercial or malign or whatever within the mass media that is just pushing a lot of effective stuff and useful stuff and interesting stuff out of the way in favor of something that's more kind of easy to promote, and you can use buzzwords, but which doesn't yet really work very well. So I don't want to be down on cognitive neuroscience. I don't want to, in any way delay its development, because I think it's very interesting and it may well get to some really great places. But I just wanted to make a video to, put out my opinion that it's also not really working very well at the moment. And there is a risk that we are going to lose more and more of traditional psychology, which whilst it might not be so heavily based on evidence, we might not understand so well why it works, it does nevertheless work. And clients come out of sessions feeling better. Okay, thank you for tuning in. Do feel free to check out my website, bioenergetics.org.uk. I've got a book, online course, and all sorts of stuff on bioenergetics. Speak to you soon.